My fiancé, Julian, just texted me asking to meet for dinner tonight. He says he wants to discuss wedding expectations. This is the same Julian who spent the last 6 weeks planning a month-long trip to Thailand with his best friend, Sienna. He framed our upcoming marriage as him losing his independence, needing one last adventure before settling down. I'm sitting here, staring at my engagement ring, wondering what fresh nightmare he's about to drop on me tonight. Because if the last 6 weeks have taught me anything, it's that every conversation with him lately ends with me questioning my own reality. I've listened to him quote Sienna's relationship wisdom like she is some kind of expert. I've found their secret text threads calling me jealous. I've watched him book this entire escape with another woman just 2 months before our wedding. I have a sinking feeling this dinner is going to be the breaking point. To understand why I'm shaking right now, you have to understand how we got here. 6 weeks ago, Julian came home from a brunch with Sienna and announced they'd been having a serious conversation about our future. He had this energy that was weirdly nervous yet excited, like someone about to pitch an idea they know is completely wrong. I was at the dining table, folding our wedding RSVPs. When he sat down, he told me that Sienna had opened his eyes to the fact that marriage is forever, and before he committed to forever, he needed to make sure he knew who he was as an individual, because once we got married, he'd be locked into obligations. He claimed he needed one last trip, specifically 1 month in Thailand with Sienna to find himself, before he lost himself in our marriage. I asked if this was some kind of joke. He insisted he was completely serious. Sienna had apparently explained how crucial this was for his mental health, arguing that the strongest marriages are between two people who know themselves as individuals first. When I asked why he couldn't go with his male friends, or even take a trip with me, he had an answer for everything. He claimed his friends would just want to party, which would prevent any real self-reflection, and a trip with me would defeat the purpose, because he needed to experience life without me to make sure he actually wanted a life with me. The way he said it made our engagement sound like a mistake he needed to verify. Over the next few weeks, the arguments were constant. He kept quoting Sienna's therapy speak about how I was trying to control his autonomy, and how my discomfort revealed my own insecurities. He'd say things like, "Sienna says couples who give each other radical freedom have the strongest bonds." He was effectively making a single woman who has never even been engaged the ultimate authority on our relationship. I finally snapped when I found messages on his iPad. Sienna was asking him if he was sure I was the one. She wrote, "If she really loves you, she'll support this trip. If she fights you on it, you'll know she's more interested in controlling you than understanding you." Julian had responded, "You're right. This will be a good test of whether she's ready to be a wife." When I confronted him, he accused me of invading his privacy and proving Sienna's point about my trust issues. He officially announced he was going through with the trip. He was leaving in 2 weeks and would be back just 1 week before the wedding. He told me his mental health had to come first. So, I walked into that restaurant tonight hoping he had come to his senses. But Julian walked in with a confident energy, ordered a bottle of wine, and told me he'd been reflecting on our relationship patterns. He pulled out his phone to show me a list of notes regarding my character flaws, criticizing how I reacted emotionally to his trip and focused too much on the wedding, rather than the marriage itself. Then came the real blow. He told me he was going on the trip regardless of my feelings to avoid resenting me, but he also had a plan for me while he was gone. He suggested I use the time to prepare for my role as his wife by taking cooking classes, to learn his favorite meals and focusing on making our house a home. He even suggested I consider stepping back from my career eventually, to support his ambitions because, as he put it, supportive wives don't question their husband's female friendships. I asked him how he would feel if I took a month-long trip with a male friend and told him to work on being a better husband. His mask slipped into pure outrage before he claimed it was different because men and women have different needs. He laid out his expectations. I was to stop complaining, work on my domestic skills, and apologize to Sienna for being unwelcoming. When I asked if Sienna would be comfortable with me visiting them in Thailand, he immediately said no, claiming my energy would ruin their experience. I realized then that he didn't want a partner. He wanted a silent supporter who would never question him. I left that dinner furious, but with a plan. The next morning, I woke up with complete clarity. I wasn't going to argue or beg anymore. Instead, I called my boss and booked 3 weeks of vacation starting in 2 weeks. Then, I called a travel agent and booked a solo adventure to Greece, Santorini, Mykonos, and Crete, leaving the exact same day as Julian's trip. When Julian texted asking if I'd thought about our conversation, I responded sweetly that I had been thinking a lot about freedom and personal growth, and that he was right. He called immediately, confused by my cheerfulness. I told him I had booked a trip to find myself, just like he taught me. When he sputtered about wedding responsibilities, I reminded him he said I was to focus on the wedding details. I told him I could learn to cook local dishes in Greece just as easily as I could learn here. That evening, I posted my tickets to social media with the caption, "Sometimes the best marriages start with two people who truly know themselves." It drove him insane, because he couldn't criticize me without being a hypocrite. On departure day, the look on his face when he saw my packed bags was priceless. He had hoped I would see him off, but instead, I was leaving for my own adventure. For the first 2 days, I posted elegant, scenic content from Santorini, while Julian posted typical tourist photos. But by day 3, the dynamic shifted drastically. Julian began posting party content where Sienna was in almost every photo. It looked less like a spiritual journey and more like a couple's honeymoon. They were constantly together in photos that crossed the line of friendship, holding onto each other at sunsets, sharing drinks, and looking far too intimate for two people who claimed to just be friends. Meanwhile, I had met a man named Nico, the grandson of a local restaurant owner, who became my guide. I posted authentic moments of cooking with his grandmother, exploring hidden beaches, and having genuine conversations. The contrast was stark. Julian looked like he was on a chaotic spring break, while I looked like I was having a life-changing cultural experience. Julian started spiraling. He texted me, asking who the guy in my stories was and why I wasn't answering. I breezily replied that I was just enjoying my freedom. By week 2, his messages turned from concern to panicked, lecturing me about boundaries while he was posting photos of him and Sienna at late-night parties. I was having the time of my life with Nico, who treated me as an equal, and I realized that real freedom isn't about testing your partner. It's about refusing to accept less than you deserve. While Julian was posting desperate captions about living without apologies, I was actually living a life I didn't want to escape from. The hypocrisy of him demanding I sit at home and learn to cook while he paraded his friendship all over the internet was finally clear to me. I stopped answering his calls entirely, letting him watch my happiness through a screen while he tried to pretend he was having a good time. On the Sunday of week 3, Julian's messages became desperate. He said he needed to talk immediately because something happened with Sienna, and he wanted to come home. I finally answered his video call while sitting at Nico's family restaurant, during a beautiful sunset. Looking genuinely happy, Julian appeared on screen from a messy hostel room, looking absolutely wrecked. He launched into a story about how Sienna had met a guy named Dylan and abandoned him a week ago, leaving him alone in Thailand. I felt nothing but relief as I calmly told him I wasn't coming home and that the wedding was off. He exploded, accusing me of throwing away our relationship for a vacation fling. But I cut him off, explaining that I wasn't leaving him for Greece. I was leaving him because he told me marrying me meant losing his freedom. I told him I had spent 3 weeks with someone who treated me as an equal, and didn't need to run away to figure out if he wanted me. When he tried to accuse me of being vindictive, I reminded him that he told me to work on myself, and I realized I didn't need to sacrifice my career or my dignity. I asked him how Sienna was, and if Dylan even existed. The panic on his face confirmed my suspicions. I told him he was going to handle canceling all the vendors and explaining to our families and friends why the wedding was off. When he tried one last manipulation to call me ridiculous, I laughed and said, "We've been done since you told me to learn to be a housewife while you went on vacation with another woman." I hung up, blocked his number, and finally felt free. Later, my friend Mara found out the truth. Sienna wasn't just a bad friend. She was a scammer who had played a long game. There was no Dylan. She had drained Julian's bank accounts, maxed out his credit cards, and stolen his passport before disappearing. He had thrown away a supportive fiancé for a con artist who left him stranded and broke. 6 months later, Julian is living with his parents, trying to rebuild his life. And me, I'm still in Greece, working remotely, and living a life where I am finally valued. One chose myself, and it was the best decision I ever made. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.